In the case of Phnom Bakhine, actually, the Temple Mountain was built around the natural hill.
Beneath one of the world's most famous temples, sealed chambers remained hidden for 9 centuries. In late 2023, ground-penetrating radar detected something that shouldn't exist. After months of bureaucratic delays and suspiciously aggressive pushback from certain academic circles, a team finally descended into the darkness.
Mainstream archaeologists believe the temple complex was likely constructed around the 12th century AD.
What they found wasn't treasure or dusty relics. It was something that made several researchers quietly request transfers to other projects. The symbols carved into those walls match warnings found in civilizations that never traded, never communicated, and existed thousands of miles apart. By the end of this video, you'll understand why some archaeologists privately admit they wish those doors had stayed closed. The discovery happened almost by accident. A University of Sydney team was conducting routine LiDAR scans of the Angkor complex, mapping what they thought would be simple flood channels. LiDAR shoots millions of laser pulses at the ground, measuring bounce-back time to create 3-dimensional maps of subsurface features. But when data came back from Angkor Wat, researchers found geometric voids where solid stone should be. Not random caves, but precise chambers with right angles and deliberate construction. The Cambodian Ministry of Culture initially denied permission to investigate, unusual considering tourism revenue depends on archaeological discoveries. 8 months of international pressure and oddly intense resistance passed before they were allowed to proceed. When they finally broke through the first seal in November 2023, the air that escaped was stale but breathable. The ventilation system still functioned after 900 years. That detail alone should have been their first warning. Most people think Angkor Wat is just an impressive temple, maybe from a travel documentary or someone's vacation photos. But it's the largest religious monument ever constructed by human hands, covering 162 hectares and containing more stone than all the Egyptian pyramids combined. The Khmer Empire built it in the 12th century, without wheels, without iron tools, without any technology we consider essential for mega construction. The blocks fit together so precisely, you can't slide a credit card between them. The entire structure aligns perfectly with the spring equinox, meaning twice a year the sun rises directly over the central tower with accuracy that modern architects struggle to replicate. The hydraulic systems still function perfectly, channeling monsoon water through kilometers of underground canals without pumps. Engineers from MIT published a paper essentially admitting they don't fully understand how the Khmer achieved this sophistication. So when scholars confidently declared they knew everything about Angkor Wat, they were spectacularly wrong. Between 2015 and 2023, LiDAR revealed that Angkor Wat isn't just a temple. It's the visible tip of a massive underground infrastructure network. Beneath the famous towers lie ventilation shafts, connecting to chambers dozens of meters below the surface. Drainage systems make modern city planning look primitive. Multiple sealed spaces showed up on scans, some deliberately filled with rubble and clay, as if someone had gone to enormous effort to keep them hidden. The team identified 17 distinct anomalies beneath the central temple complex. After considerable debate about structural collapse risks, they selected 3 chambers to open. The criteria for selection was never publicly disclosed, but leaked emails suggest they chose based on something other than archaeological significance. What they found in the first chamber was unsettling. The second was genuinely disturbing. But the third chamber, that's when team members started making excuses to leave the project. Chamber 1 sat 30 meters beneath the western gallery. The descent required rappelling down a shaft barely wide enough for one person. making you acutely aware of millions of tons overhead. When the first headlamps swept the interior, they found a classroom-sized room with stone tablets lining the walls in moisture-protected alcoves. Palm leaf manuscripts had survived in surprising condition, thanks to stable temperature and low humidity. Initial translation revealed standard religious texts, administrative records about rice harvests and construction schedules, the boring stuff archaeologists love. Then they noticed sections that didn't fit. References to the cycle appeared repeatedly, always capitalized, always suggesting dread rather than celebration. Multiple tablets mentioned the return, not as philosophy, but as a specific event with dates and astronomical markers. One well-preserved manuscript described the cleansing, and the surrounding text made clear it wasn't metaphorical. These weren't typical Buddhist or Hindu texts. They read like emergency protocols, instructions for specific conditions. Researchers familiar with ancient Khmer writings admitted off-record they'd never encountered this documentation style. The tablets included dates correlating to astronomical events, some aligned with known historical disasters like mega droughts and political collapses. What was unsettling was how clinical it sounded, like reading a disaster preparedness manual written by people who knew exactly what was coming. Chamber 2 changed everything. Located deeper and accessed through a separate shaft, this space featured elaborate architecture. Someone had considered this chamber important enough to spend years decorating. Covering one entire wall was a map, incredibly detailed and created with sophisticated surveying knowledge. But the coastlines were wrong. Not slightly inaccurate like medieval maps tend to be, but fundamentally different from 12th century geography. Some sections matched modern coastal topology with disturbing accuracy. Other areas showed land masses that only existed during the last ice age when sea levels were 100 meters lower, 12,000 years before the Khmer existed. The relief included star charts marking constellations with precision that shouldn't be possible without telescopes. Researchers spent weeks trying to find conventional explanations before noticing something that killed those theories. The map showed chambers and passages beneath Angkor Wat that the radar scans hadn't detected yet. Later verification confirmed the map's accuracy. The Khmer knew exactly what lay beneath their own temple, which means either they built this massive underground network themselves, raising huge questions about their capabilities, or they were mapping something that already existed when they arrived. Neither option fits established historical narratives. Chamber 3 was different from the moment they breached the seal. 3 team members reported feeling wrong instantly. That primitive sensation when something's off, but you can't identify why. Electronic equipment behaved strangely. Cameras failed unexpectedly. Digital thermometers fluctuated wildly despite stable conditions. The chamber was larger than the first 2, roughly circular with a domed ceiling creating unusual acoustic properties. Every sound echoed in ways that felt intentional, almost designed. Floor-to-ceiling inscriptions covered every surface in multiple scripts: Standard Khmer, Classical Sanskrit, and symbols linguists still can't definitively identify. The central feature was a massive carved relief depicting scenes unlike anything else in Angkor Wat. Flames consumed cities, while water levels rose and receded in sequential panels. Figures fled toward underground spaces, while celestial bodies appeared in configurations astronomers confirm represent actual planetary alignments from specific historical periods. 7 distinct panels showed catastrophic cycles. Partially translated inscriptions contain disturbingly specific phrases. When the waters rise again beyond the 3rd marker, suggests actual measurement systems for sea level changes. 7 cycles of fire between the long silence implies tracking patterns across enormous timescales. The wise shall descend when the sky clears, and the old gods sleep, reads less like poetry, more like instructions. Carbon dating of organic residue in the mortar suggests portions predate the temple by several centuries. Either the Khmer discovered existing chambers and added inscriptions, or they were preserving knowledge from something earlier we have no record of. Someone sealed this chamber from inside using considerable effort. The entrance had been blocked with precisely fitted stones, then covered with architectural elements, hiding any evidence of an opening. They wanted this space forgotten. Here's where it gets uncomfortable for conventional archaeology. Similar chambers with similar warnings have been found at other sites worldwide. Beneath the Giza Plateau in Egypt, sealed rooms contain inscriptions describing rising waters and the necessity of going underground. At Tikal in Guatemala, chambers reference the Great Thirsting. A mega-drought archaeological evidence confirms happened. In the Indus Valley, sealed structures contain unreadable scripts with repeated symbols associated with water and fire. These civilizations never contacted each other, separated by thousands of miles and thousands of years. The orthodox explanation is that all cultures share common disaster fears, so obviously they'd create similar warnings. That explanation collapses when you examine specifics. They're not warning about generic disasters. They're describing cycles with similar time frames. They all mention preserving knowledge underground. They all use architecture and astronomy to mark specific dates. When researchers compared inscriptions from Angkor, Tikal, and Indus Valley sites, patterns emerged that shouldn't exist if these cultures developed independently. References to 7 cycles appear across multiple sites. Descriptions of preparations involving underground spaces with sophisticated ventilation and water access show up in civilizations that supposedly had no contact. The uncomfortable question is whether they were all responding to the same information we've lost or deliberately forgotten. The Angkor inscriptions reference a specific timeline, events marked at roughly 3,000 to 5,000 year intervals, which corresponds to documented climate catastrophes in the geological record. The Younger Dryas event, 12,000 years ago, caused global temperature drops and massive ecological disruption. The Bronze Age collapse 3,000 years ago saw multiple civilizations fail simultaneously, for reasons historians still debate. Major droughts have struck Southeast Asia cyclically, with severe episodes at intervals matching what the chamber inscriptions describe. Solar scientists have documented long-term patterns in solar activity affecting climate over millennia. The Angkor inscriptions include dates aligning with these known events, but also dates that haven't happened yet. Some astronomical alignments described in Chamber 3 correspond to planetary positions that will occur in the next century. That's probably coincidence, except the Khmer went to enormous effort to preserve this information in a chamber designed to last thousands of years. You don't do that for philosophical musings. You do that when you believe the information is critically important for survival. Why build everything underground? The chambers beneath Angkor Wat aren't storage spaces. They feature ventilation systems sophisticated enough to maintain breathable air indefinitely. Underground springs provide limestone-filtered potable water. The chambers are large enough to house significant numbers of people with supplies. Temperature regulation happens naturally, staying cool during tropical heat. The construction protects against surface threats, whether environmental, military, or something else. This wasn't symbolic architecture. These spaces were designed for long-term habitation by people who needed to survive the surface becoming uninhabitable. Elite knowledge seems involved because the chambers aren't easily accessible from the main temple. You'd need to know exactly where to look and how to access them. Modern humanity builds seed vaults in Arctic mountains, stores data in underground bunkers, creates survival caches for catastrophic events. We act like this is unprecedented forward thinking, but the Khmer were doing the same thing 9 centuries ago. The difference is, they seemed to know something specific was coming rather than preparing for vague possibilities. The engineering raises questions that make archaeologists visibly uncomfortable. Angkor Wat contains roughly 10 million tons of stone, all quarried 50 kilometers away and transported without modern machinery. Blocks fit together with millimeter fraction tolerances. Some chambers have acoustic properties amplifying sound at specific frequencies, suggesting intentional design for purposes we don't understand. The hydraulic systems move water using gravity and pressure perfectly without pumps. Current construction firms cannot replicate the precision achieved by a civilization supposedly working with primitive tools. This sophistication should have developed gradually over centuries, but Angkor Wat appears in the historical record suddenly in the early 12th century, fully formed with capabilities that shouldn't exist. The conventional explanation is that we're missing earlier developmental stages, that predecessor sites exist undiscovered. But a decade of intensive archaeological survey using the latest technology has found nothing. The alternative explanation is that the Khmer inherited knowledge rather than developing it, building on foundations laid by something earlier. Those foundations would include advanced mathematics, with pi and phi ratios embedded in the temple's proportions, astronomical knowledge precise enough to align structures with celestial events years in advance, medical understanding evident in relief carvings showing surgical procedures Europe wouldn't rediscover for centuries, botanical gardens planned with sophisticated understanding of plant genetics, metallurgical techniques producing tools harder than should be possible with their supposed technology. All of this appears suddenly, then disappears just as quickly when Angkor was abandoned in the 15th century. The suppression question emerges when examining what happened to Khmer knowledge. Invading forces almost always destroy libraries, temples, and educational institutions first. Knowledge is power, and eliminating knowledge eliminates resistance. Angkor's abandonment in the 15th century happened rapidly, with the population dispersing seemingly overnight. Religious transitions from Hinduism to Buddhism to Theravada Buddhism saw each wave bury or destroy previous traditions. Every cultural shift erased pieces of accumulated knowledge. What makes the chambers significant is that they were sealed from the inside. Someone still controlling the temple deliberately chose to hide this information, suggesting they knew preservation was more important than access. We build seed vaults like Svalbard and underground data archives, acknowledging that catastrophic loss is possible. The Khmer did the same, but focused on preserving specific knowledge about cycles and preparation. They succeeded so well, we forgot the chambers existed until radar accidentally revealed them. Now things get uncomfortable regarding what scientists actually say versus what they publish. The official position remains measured and academic. Significant archaeological discovery. More study needed. Preliminary findings suggest revision of previous assumptions. But off-record conversations paint a different picture. Multiple researchers involved in chamber exploration have expressed unease about the implications. Translation work continues, but certain sections resist interpretation in ways linguists find genuinely puzzling. Carbon dating produces results that don't align with established chronology, creating age inconsistencies nobody wants to discuss publicly. The Cambodian government restricted further excavation in March 2024, citing structural integrity concerns, but internal communications suggest other motivations. UNESCO involvement brought international oversight, but also layers of bureaucracy, slowing information release. The scientific community remains divided, establishment figures advocating caution, while younger researchers push for transparency. Many significant findings haven't been published in peer-reviewed journals, remaining trapped in draft form or circulating informally among specialists. Photographs and partial translations leak periodically through academic networks, showing details that never make official reports. Some argue this information should remain controlled, that public disclosure would create unnecessary panic. The counter-argument is that deliberate suppression violates scientific principles and public trust. Either way, the full story isn't being told. The climate connection makes establishment figures most nervous. Chamber inscriptions specifically and repeatedly warn about rising water levels. Ancient markers carved into stone indicate historical high water events correlating with known flood periods in Southeast Asia. References to mega-droughts and extreme monsoon cycles describe conditions geological evidence confirms happened. The climate collapse theory suggests environmental catastrophe, not military conquest, destroyed the Khmer Empire. Modern civilization faces rising seas, increasingly extreme weather, and rapid climate change stress paralleling historical collapse patterns. Some inscriptions describe environmental conditions matching current scientific projections for the next century. The timeline encoded in Chamber 3 suggests these changes happen faster and more dramatically than gradualist models predict. Phrases like water reaching the seventh step in 3 moon cycles suggest they measured rate of change, not just final outcomes. References to the sky burning at midday when the winds fail sounds disturbingly like heat domes and atmospheric changes. Their preparations focused heavily on underground survival, water management, and knowledge preservation, the same priorities modern survivalist planners emphasize. The difference is they seem to be working from specific precedent rather than theoretical extrapolation. This matters because lost civilizations might have understood cyclical patterns. Our relatively short historical record misses. Modern industrial civilization has existed roughly 2 centuries. Our detailed climate records go back a few hundred years at most. The Khmer were tracking patterns across millennia and correlating them with astronomical cycles. Pattern recognition was clearly important to them, important enough to encode in stone and architecture and hide in sealed chambers. Modern hubris assumes we're the first advanced civilization, that everything before us was primitive. But what if we're just the latest iteration? What if the knowledge we think we're discovering was actually preserved by people who knew civilization could fail because they'd seen it happen before? The real question isn't whether the Khmer were sophisticated. Archaeological evidence makes that clear. The question is where they got their information and why they were so certain it needed to be preserved underground. Unreleased findings fuel most speculation. A 4th chamber was allegedly discovered, but never officially acknowledged. Some initially opened sections have been sealed again with explanations citing structural integrity that engineers quietly dispute. Certain LiDAR data remains classified under provisions typically reserved for security-sensitive material. Key team members left the project abruptly, declining all interview requests. The rumor circulating in archaeological circles claims one chamber contained something so significant that immediate consensus emerged to restrict access permanently. Local Khmer people maintain the chambers should stay sealed, conveying that cultural memory suggests some knowledge brings harm. Equipment failures in specific chambers exceeded statistical norms, with electronics malfunctioning in patterns technicians couldn't explain. The official explanation remains perpetually that more research is needed before disclosure, but that timeline keeps extending without justification. The forbidden knowledge problem has historical precedent. Information threatening social stability gets suppressed, sometimes violently. The Library of Alexandria's destruction represents catastrophic knowledge loss. Authorities always control what populations know, what gets taught, what's preserved, and what fades. If the chamber warnings are literal, describing specific future events, what's the responsible course? Mass panic serves no one. Economic systems built on stability assumptions could collapse if people genuinely believed catastrophic change was imminent. Tourism revenue, international investment, social cohesion all depend on perceived stability. The choice becomes whether people have a right to information that might trigger harmful responses, or whether protecting them serves the greater good. Neither answer satisfies, which probably explains why the question keeps getting deflected. The pattern continues expanding as advanced scanning reaches more ancient sites. Egyptian pyramids reveal hidden chambers. Mexican sites show underground networks exceeding surface structures. Peruvian complexes contain sealed spaces predating known regional civilizations. Chinese archaeological sites reveal buried structures with architecture that doesn't match established timelines. The message seems consistent. Knowledge preservation underground, environmental catastrophe warnings, references to cycles and returns. Technology is unsealing what was meant to stay hidden, and the pace accelerates. AI decodes previously resistant scripts. Satellite imaging penetrates jungle and desert. Ground-penetrating radar maps through solid rock. We've developed capabilities to uncover millennia-old secrets. The question nobody asks loudly enough is whether those secrets stayed hidden because nobody could find them, or because someone ensured we wouldn't. Were these chambers' warnings designed to help future generations survive, or sealed by people who understood that some knowledge accelerates the disasters it describes? Ancient chambers beneath famous monuments. Modern technology revealing hidden messages. Warnings describing collapse patterns. And dates carved 9 centuries ago corresponding to events in our immediate future. The Cambodian government isn't accepting exploration proposals for Angkor's underground spaces. Researchers involved in initial discoveries moved to other projects or declined to discuss findings. And somewhere beneath one of the world's most photographed temples, chambers remain sealed containing information someone decided we're not ready to see.